The 2009 draft class is one of the greatest that we have ever seen, with legends like Steph Curry, James Harden, and DeMar DeRozan. We also saw some great players like Blake Griffin, Ricky Rubio, and Drew Holiday. With every draft, though, there are draft busts. Even with all the players I just listed, the second overall pick in this draft ended up being one of the biggest busts in NBA history, only playing 5 years in the league with a career total of 483 points. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be exploring one of the biggest draft busts in NBA history. Going into the 2009 draft, the number one overall pick was pretty much chalked in. Blake Griffin from Oklahoma was seen as a generational talent by some, but pretty much all could agree that he was the best overall player. After that, the Memphis Grizzlies had their pick with the second overall pick, where some things changed based on the analyst. Brandon Jennings, Ricky Rubio, James Harden, Steph Curry, all options for the Grizzlies with their second overall pick. The Grizzlies got the second pick by going 24-58 the previous season with a very young roster including rookie Marc Gasol and first and second year veterans like Mike Conley, Kyle Lowry, and Rudy Gay. There was some optimism that this core could continue to improve, and with the second overall pick, they could finally find that missing puzzle piece. In the offseason, they would also sign a 28-year-old Zach Randolph, who was about to enter his prime, making this roster look even more enticing. They had the option to go in pretty much any direction, with the starting lineup pretty much being set going into the season, so they would be able to get a good piece off of the bench to try to develop him into a future star. He would come in with little expectations, as whoever they got with this second pick wouldn't need to be a franchise player right away, but if he was, that would help out their case. As the draft got closer, many started to predict Memphis's pick, but nothing was certain until the night of the draft. The consensus would be that they would go with Hasheem Thabeet, center from UConn. Thabeet played 3 seasons for UConn, racking up an All-American selection, 2 Big East selections, and 2 Big East Defensive Player of the Year awards. Thabeet was seen as one of the best defensive players in the country before departing to the draft, and he would average over 4 blocks a game, standing at 7'3". The Grizzlies became enticed by the idea of having a massive man in the middle to stop the bigger centers in the league. By draft night, the Grizzlies handed in their card, drafting Thabeet, with this being the best moment of his NBA career.
With the second pick in the 2009 NBA draft, the Memphis Grizzlies select Hasheem Thabeet from Dar.
Thabeet started his career on the Grizzlies with very limited minutes, only seeing 20 minutes 2 times before the All-Star break. He would only score double digits in 1 outing throughout the start of the season, and it seemed like the Grizzlies were a bit skeptical of his play. This was true as he would be sent down to the then D-League, where he was the highest drafted player at the time who had ever been sent down. He would play 6 games during this time for the Dakota Wizards and would average 14, 11, and 3 blocks, showing he was good enough to play. He might just not have been ready for the NBA competition. When he got called back, his minutes would see an increase after his good performance with the D-League Grizzly team, having some optimism about his development, hoping that his time in the D-League would be encouraging for him. Out of his final 18 games on the season, he would then see 9 games with 20 or more minutes, which was a massive increase. And despite the increase in minutes, his scoring still wasn't there, with his game high of shots attempted being 7 over this time, despite playing up to 35 minutes one game. He would still make an impact defensively with multiple games with multiple blocks and averaging over 5 rebounds over this stretch. Despite Hasheem's struggles, the Grizzlies would end this season at 40-42, with points of the season being over 500 and looking for a potential playoff spot. Over the offseason, the Grizzlies knew they had an opportunity as the young core was able to come together last season and have a 16-win increase over one season, and the future was looking bright. The only problem was that the Grizzlies really didn't need Hasheem and didn't see him in their future plans. Was he good on the defensive end? Yes, but the team couldn't afford to throw him on the court as he really wasn't good enough offensively to play in the league with starter minutes or even massive bench minutes. A few rebounds and blocks a game look good when you struggle to score multiple shots a game. There is a limit on how much you can really help your team, especially when you're trying to contend for a playoff spot. The team still had hope at this point for Hasheem, but with a solid starting five and veterans coming off of the bench, Hasheem would only see 8 minutes a game on average during the season, despite playing 45 games. He would later get traded at the deadline for Shane Battier and Ish Smith as he was sent to the Rockets. He would only play 7 games for the Rockets before being traded to Portland, and then in the next offseason he would sign with the Thunder, marking his 4th team in 3 years, as he would end his NBA career there and would be signed after by a few teams but never play another minute, playing his final minute for the Thunder. After his NBA career, he would still continue to play basketball though. He would play for the Japanese B League, he would be signed for Fort Wayne in the NBA G League but would be later cut. He would also play for the Taiwanese P League and the Taiwanese T1 League. He currently is playing basketball in the 2024 BA qualification tournaments, and overall, he's playing all right. If we're looking at his stats right now, he's still only averaging 5.5 points per game, but he's getting 11 rebounds and 3 blocks, so it seems a lot like his NBA stats, even though he averaged less than 5 points in pretty much every season that he played in the NBA. But I guess it's encouraging to see him still playing basketball. He was the P League rebounding leader, blocks leader, defensive player of the year in 2021, getting a few awards as he plays overseas. The reason why Thabeet couldn't stay on an NBA team was his offensive inefficiency. We talk about how easy it is to score in the modern NBA, with defense being not as much of a priority, and you can make a team without having to be that great at defense if you can produce offensively. It just doesn't work the same the other way. Being one of the best shot blockers in college basketball history, it was sad to see him not be able to pan out in the NBA, but without an offensive output, it's hard to keep your spot on a team. As we know in the current NBA, Ben Simmons, a guy who never really developed that jump shot, was still able to get points and was still able to become an all-star at his peak, driving to the rim. Hasheem Thabeet just never had an offensive bag. We always talk about in the offseason when Ben Simmons shows those videos of him shooting from deep, but Thabeet was Ben Simmons without any offense, which that's pretty bad if you ask me. He was asked about how he felt about his NBA experience, and he said, "The Grizzlies gave up on me. You've never heard of a number 2 overall pick who got as few minutes as I did or as few chances I did. If it had been drafted by a different team, it would be a different story. There's no question in my mind. I wouldn't be playing for the Mad Ants. I might be playing for the Pacers. If I'd been developed, I'd still be in the NBA right now." He was talking about this in 2020 when he signed for the Mad Ants and never ended up playing. And Hasheem Thabeet still playing basketball, so it's still good to see him living out his dream, but he will never be able to come back to the NBA just because he's not good enough offensively, especially in the current day NBA with this high scoring. He will go down as one of the biggest draft busts in NBA history, and it seems like he's just not talked about as much, especially with the rest of the players in this class like I mentioned before. Imagine how good that Grizzlies team would have been if they got a guy like Steph Curry, James Harden, or even DeMar DeRozan with that core that I mentioned earlier. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if you want to see another video on an NBA draft bust. There are plenty to go through, as every year we see players get drafted very high, and not every draft prospect can pan out in the NBA. If you are looking for a specific one, right here I have my Tyreke Evans video. He was one of only 5 rookies ever to average 25 and 5, and after that, his career went completely downhill as he would never get back to the peak, and I'll see you guys in that one.